Hi,
Right.
everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Swicky with For Better For Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with K9 Defined.
How are you? Happy, I guess, night before Valentine's Day. Eve, Valentine's Day Eve, I guess. Let us know you're there. Today we are going to be talking about relationships with dogs, obviously, and more specifically, since the eve of Valentine's is upon us. Just so for the record, people, I am not a big Valentine aficionado. I think uh, happy VD. That's what I say, Karen. That's what I say. Uh, I think everybody needs to be nice all the time and flowers all the time and instead of what special day. So I'm not so we're being a little facetious on this day, but I thought it would be a great time to discuss it and talk about how relationships with our dogs because as of late and in the last I would say, and you guys can correct me, in the last I don't know 5 years or so, the word relationship gets thrown around with dog trainers all the time. And it's like, so what exactly does that mean and what does that look like and what are they talking about specifically? So everybody has a different spin on it and everybody has a different approach to it, but I figured we'd kind of chat about it during for this Facebook Live and kind of get everybody out there um what their take on it because we have everybody has a specific view on relationships, right? And not only with dogs, but with people and how it should be and what that should look like. So I thought we'd take time to talk about it and see and get your opinion. So be ready to jump in and uh, give us your feedback or your thoughts on it. And by the way, thank you everybody for the feedback we got for the polls from last week. That was really great. And we got some good information and ideas about how to um, what to do in the future and what to do more of, because that helps us too, right? Because we think, oh, that's a great thing to do, but if you guys don't think it's valuable, then why do it? So we're appreciative, and we will put those things into play as we go along. So anyway, really quickly, what I did look up in the dictionary about what relationships are, and so or the meaning of it. So I'm going to actually read you a story of what that is. So a relationship, per the Webster, and Lisa and Joanne can jump in. Um, Relationship is in a way in which two or more people, groups, countries, etc., talk to, behave towards, and deal with each other. The relationship between two countries has improved, is one example, right? So I like the part about behave towards and deal with each other because that is a huge part of dog training and what we do and how we live with our dogs, right? So, you guys you want anything to add? Because I did look it up because it was fascinating to me, like what it really what the meaning was. So, anybody?
Noah has ideas about it. No. Um, no, I think it's good, right? We have interactions with people all the time, but you don't have relationships with people all the time, right? So
Right.
I think just because you have an interaction doesn't mean you have a close connection with someone. So,
Unless you're a crazy person.
well, you know,
Unless you're
those exist too.
So my question is what so a relationship like it's really not a question. It's like what do you see as a relationship, right? It's like to me, hey Melanie, um a relationship between a and this and not only in dogs and people, like what it means, it's how you behave towards each other. So I think and I believe in many ways the way we interact with our dogs is kind of have how we deal with our human relationships too, a little bit, right? A little bit. It does bleed over a little bit. Sometimes it's very different, but moreover, I think it is a little bit of a it is a little bit of a takeoff on how we have our human relationships as well. So, um, so one of the things that, and one of the things I did look up as I was kind of researching for this is why we love dogs so much. Why people and dogs, and we have this great huge dog community. Why we love dogs so much. So
Sorry. Trying to like
Spotlight. What's your answer?
didn't
oh yeah, that's a really good point, Sue. 8 years with Penny is a different relationship with 8 months with somebody else, even though you can't have as strong of a bond. So I was talking to Lisa and Joanne, and I think one of the things we're gonna share, we'll start a little sharing thing here,
Uh-oh.
is we we all, as dog trainers, when I started in dog training a long time ago, um, the dog trainers never said that their dogs had issues or problems. They basically made you believe that their relationships were perfect and they had the perfect dog. Well, the real truth is we don't. We really don't. We struggle. We have difficulties with our dogs, just like everybody else, and how we deal with them. We're not always 100% right, even though we have all this knowledge that we've gathered. Sometimes when you're too close to the project, it becomes a bigger problem. So, uh, Lisa said we talked about possibly sharing a really good relationship we had with a dog and one that's not so great. So your dogs are perfect. Yeah, okay,
Nice.
Amy. So,
Nice.
so I will talk. I had two. I've had quite a few dogs, right? And I love them all. And this is not saying that one's better than the other. But I've had two dogs that we had a relationship that really just clicked. Like we got each other, we understood each other very well, and we had a very interesting connection. And it was pretty, and it lasted pretty much our whole lives, right? One was Bandit, my first agility dog. He 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 was a perfect dog for me. He When I got him, he was chewing up my house, but that's because he needed a job. And so once he got that job, it was wonderful. And yes, you're right. They struggle with us as well. And the other one is Cha-Cha, who I just lost recently. Her We had a very, very unique relationship. We kind of knew each other, like what I was thinking, I knew what she was thinking most of the time, and we were very, very we had a very close love relationship. There was a connection there. It
Mhm.
wasn't, and our relationship wasn't always physical, touchy, grabby. I mean, I pet her and I loved her, but we were together. We would be together wherever we went, and we can take them anywhere and do anything. One recent relationship that's been strained is that of my beloved 4-year-old shepherd boy. Um, to be transparent, those of you who've been at my facility, the barking, I had to move my office because the barking became such a problem that I was starting to just not and he's the sweetest dog I've ever owned, but it was starting to resent him for not being able to be quiet in the office. He was fine everywhere else,
Mhm.
but so I was having a little resentful issues, and I was just not feeling the love for him like I felt I should. And yeah, you feel guilty and not really great about that feeling. Um, so I decided to really do something about it and change it because I didn't want that to continue. Because I was just starting to just not like him so much, just because of that, right? And that just bothered me enough in this relationship that we have. The barking in my office was just became such a problem. So I decided to really do something about it to improve our relationship, and I moved my office across the way. We've made some adjustments, and now we have some. And this is where Susan was saying they struggle too, and this is he we were both struggling in this area. And now we get along really well, and we make time to cuddle, and we make time to love, and it's much better. It's not perfect, but it's much, much better. So we have those feelings too with our animals, right? Just like everybody who's out there listening or whatever, same. All right, Lisa, go.
There's one of my favorite dogs ever, Ivy, because she loves me just like this, and I love it. She does
Oh, God.
I know. I had to. I'm sorry. She is one of my favorite dogs, though. So even though, even though she was not anything I wanted temperamentally, she just, I don't know. I worked really hard to have a relationship with her. Um, when I went away and came back, she didn't even recognize me when she was a puppy, and I worked so hard at that. And the amount of gratitude that I have towards her for for us being able to connect, it's something different, right? When you have that, um, and yeah, she made me work so hard because I was supposed to show her, and she hated people, and it was just terrible. But anyway, so that was good. It was something that was kind of like a difficult start, and then it got better. Um, And then the other, well, there's two others. Maxwell, for those of you who don't know, I had Papillons, a couple, three. And Max was kind of my start into training altogether. But we clicked. I met him. We looked at each other. Everything was great. And he's like, I get you. I get you. And we had our moments, but it was so much more smoother of a transition. And like you said, like you with Cha-Cha, yeah. It was just kind of like
Easy.
putting on, yeah, cozy, putting on like a bunch of, yeah, it was interesting. Anyway, and then Lucas, he was just like when Nancy and I were together, we go to different places. Chacha and him were just like the two dogs. You could be like, whatever. They were bomb proof. They were super nice, and we didn't have to worry about anything, and they weren't yelling at anybody. And I personally didn't realize how good I had it a few times. You know what I mean? So I'm like, ooh, I'm a little slow in my head. And then as far as like some of the more challenging relationships I've had, one was my dog Charlie, and Charlie was the biggest jerk that ever lived. I mean, I loved him. He was a cute little bugger. I wanted him to, and he'd do his little sealed thing with his paws, and I just love that. I loved him, but I hated him. I'm not gonna lie. He was hard, and our relationship was really hard because it was hard for me to accept that he didn't really like other dogs. He didn't enjoy their company, even in my own home. So we made a whole little area for him that was a separate, like the dining room. When we moved here, my dining room is now my dog room, but it was Charlie's room, and my husband loved him because, of course, he loved Bruce, and so Bruce would go outside and cook and have his barbecue and stuff. And he's like, "Come on, Charlie, let's go." So they had a great relationship that way. So that was hard. It was hard to accept. And I think that's what strained our relationship. Then the other one is, and I've had a lot of dogs, I'm sorry. The other one is Fender. Fender was tough. I had high aspirations for him. He was Lucas's son. I was like, oh my gosh, he's amazing, and this and that. He'll be great, just like his dad. Nope, they were different, right? And so it was a disappointment, honestly. But then towards the end, I'm like, why am I fighting this? Why am I making him do something he doesn't want to do? Is that even fair? And then I felt this tremendous amount of guilt. And then I started accepting him. And then it went well. I mean, we were good, and I accepted him for who he was, not for who I wanted him to be in our relationship. So, yeah, so that was it. And I still feel a little guilty because he was such a good dog. He was the best snuggler ever.
But I think we with as dog sport people, we tend to have those situations where we want a dog for whatever, and it doesn't work out, and it's really hard to let, because we have to let that go, right?
Right,
They're not going to do that, right?
right.
All
And
right,
you're
Joanne.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to shout out to Tammy and Michelle. I see, yes, you had one of Lucas's daughters, Echo. I know. I remember her, the little hag. But anyway, go ahead. Oh,
I'm sorry, guys. I have to skip the story. This is a an anniversary for me that I
Yeah.
didn't think would hit me this hard. So, the only thing, hold on. The only thing I'll leave with you, since you don't get a personal story, because I share them all the time, good, bad, indifferent, good relationships, bad relationships, when they're not here anymore, where they get taken from you too soon, you'll give anything to give that, like, that bad relationship back just a little more time, man.
Yeah.
And even after this long, it's just like, I thought I could do it, but
Mhm. Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Today is, today is actually Patty's birthday and the anniversary of Joanne's losing her dog. So yeah, it's really it's and it's true, right? Because as we
Mhm.
have difficulties and go through um trials and tribulations and stuff like that, it's really very when they're not there anymore, it's like, oh, you'd give one more day
Mhm.
to want to choke them out. or wanna or want to but yeah, but that's the struggle, right, you guys, when either the person or the dog isn't here anymore. It's one of those things that's like, oh, you wish you could have um what could you have done different? It's easy to second guess yourself. So
Mhm.
it's important to, and that's why one of the reasons that we do what we do, right? To help make those better and to um be able to uh adjust and understand the dogs better, because that's really the whole goal of what we do and why we do it and all that. And I know sometimes it gets very mixed up, right? Because we do a lot of dog sports, and it's really not, the dog sports are just a part of having a relationship with our
Mhm.
dogs.
Yep.
It's not everything, it's a part of it. And that's why some of the people who do dog sports, that's why we do them, to so we can spend more time, because we enjoy the company of that animal, those. And that's why when we get a new dog, or and you said you can never, you never, when you lose a dog or dogs over time, or in a different, it it's just different, right? And it changes the relationships with the dogs that are left behind too. Because I know
Mhm.
it has from in my house, it's changed since I've lost two in the last short time. And so it's been a very interesting transition as you go through it. But the big key is to be aware of it, right? That it's happening and it's changing, because it does, and it's weird how it does. And unfortunately, in Joanne's case, it was a little different, right? It's a little more uh,
yeah,
stressful, because she didn't lose them just because they got old and passed away. But it's a different, it's a little different, but it changes how she's going to relate to her
Mhm.
current dogs, right?
Yep.
Because it's a different.
yes.
Uh,
So, sorry, I got
yeah,
it together now.
yeah. Go ahead.
So, so yeah, I mean, right? It's just, it's sort of, like a lot of those stories, right? It can be a dear, dear friend, it can be a family member, it can be a dog. And when you have those moments that they were here an hour ago or they were here yesterday and you were just doing whatever, that special thing, or sometimes just talking to them or just thinking about them or anything, right? And then they're not there anymore. It seems like, oh, we had that fight, or oh, I hate it when it all just fades away, right? So even when you have jerky stuff, oh, that dog was such a jerk, or they fought with so and so, or whatever. When it's not there anymore, it's like, I guess that wasn't so bad, you know. And
Right.
you think too of like, they leave, even if they leave, we got to spend a whole life with them and we're expecting it, right? I think they teach us so, so, so much. Like, I know I
Mhm.
was having a conversation with Nance a few weeks ago, and it was kind of like, I didn't want this right now, but it's stuff I didn't know, right? And I apologize to dogs in my training history, right? I don't think I ever did anything horrible to a dog. But you're like, oh man, I could have made that so much better for you knowing what I know now. And so I always continue to apologize to dogs past, right? Like,
Yeah.
super sorry. I wish
Yeah.
I knew what I did, but thanks for teaching me, and thanks for, pushing me forward into being a better person and dog trainer, and giving me more knowledge. So,
Right.
Right.
um, I think that's a big part of the relationship status for me too, is like, even when they're not here anymore, they have made such an impact on knowledge, right? What you'll never do again, what totally worked, what magical thing you learned with them. And so that, in that way, I think everyone can kind of live on a little bit, right? When you can have those
Yes.
remembrances, and then another dog, friend, human, whatever, right, gets to benefit from that history.
Yeah, because and that's kind of always our goal, right? To try to learn, because the dogs are here to teach us a lot of stuff. But some of us don't want to, they don't want to learn it, right? They don't want to, because it does parallel so much to our people situation and how we deal with people in our lives, that the dogs, sometimes it's hard to, because the dogs kind of are a mirror a little bit. What we're doing right and what we're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it's hard to look at that and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
why is he or she doing that?" Because it's like, because I taught her that, and maybe he didn't want that, or
Yes.
whatever that is, right? Um, and one of the reasons we love dogs, and this is why, it's such a difficult thing, is because dogs, when we fall in love, whether it's with another human being, or we connect with a child, it releases the oxytocin, and that's why we love dogs. That's why we teach them a lot of we connect with them on such a deep level, and that's why we think we sometimes say they're like our children. You know what I mean? And this is where that, there's a whole where we do treat them like children sometimes, and there's issues with all of that. But that's why we love dogs so much. There was a study done that when we pet a dog, it helps with anxiety. And in many of our cases, the truth is, if we didn't have dogs, we would be pretty lonely, some of us, especially as we get older. People die, we have no more family members, we're, whatever our family structure is, and unfortunately then our dogs do become our family, and then the community at large, the dog community then becomes our family as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very interesting dynamics, and that's why when we lose a dog, and or any it's almost it's almost I have to say, in some cases, it's almost harder than losing a person. I know that says it's crazy, but it's almost as challenging as that, and that has been my experience for sure. So it's almost as difficult as losing, somebody, a person, a friend that that you've had for, especially if you've got to live a long life with that dog, with that pet, right? Dog, cat, whatever it is. Because even my cats, I was never a cat person before I got Fido, and I they're a big part of my life now. So it'd be an interesting. I've not lost a cat yet, but I'm gonna imagine I love them as much as the dog. So my guess it'll be the same. But yeah, it's an interesting little situation when. Um, so I think that's why we need to treat our when we're training our dogs with that relationship part more in the forefront. And this is something that Suzanne has really brought to the forefront about, is this okay for you? Does this work for you? Because if this was a person, you'd be asking those questions. And sometimes we don't ask that of the dogs. Are you having a good time? Does this work for you? Sometimes we don't ask, we just make them go through it. Right?
Don't be a CrossFit trainer, dog trainer.
Right. Right.
Push it, push it.
Yeah. Right.
I was like, what? What did you say?
CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yes,
That I
CrossFit.
do CrossFit, but I'm just saying.
Nice. Nice. Ugh.
Yes, Tyrone, I see that you have persevered. Yeah, sometimes dogs, like people, have bad days, and sometimes we
Mhm.
got to think about that.
I
Yeah,
see.
that's a good point Katie put out there, right? Even some of your close family, they don't live with you every single day. Dogs are like so ingrained in our daily
Oh
routines,
yeah.
right?
Right. So that's why one of the things we wanted to, just when you're training, like, how is this for you? And I think I was telling Joanne and Lisa about, I was training my lab how to stay because she was having such a hard time with it. And this is where, and then I do it too. Cha-Cha, I taught her how to stand, walk around in outside the ring before I went in to do it, and she learned it right away. She goes, "Yep, got that." Jive is like, "Nope, you're gonna have to work for it." Just saying.
Mhm. Yep.
so so, so uh, and for a moment, it was a little sad because I was like, "Ah, she's not like her," but that's okay. She's gonna make me better at something else. And so I backed it up and I tried something else, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I can do that." All right. So, I enjoyed that moment of being aware that I was doing that, because she had to bring that to the forefront. Like, yeah, I'm not that dog, so you're gonna have to make me understand what you want. So she's very clear about what's okay for her. So it was great. It was, they always are here to teach us something. But
Mhm.
that's why one of the things, it's like always in our training when we're wanting them to learn something, or when we're at trials, is this work for you? Is this okay? Are you happy? Um, but the hard part, I think, to be honest with you, is that sometimes we're like, oh, he's having a hard time. No, he's not. He's really not. Sometimes we are having a hard time and we're making it we're making it about them.
Yep.
So this is where we wanted to kind of go about, you really want to be clear. And this is why we go back to a lot of reading your dog, reading dog body language,
Mhm.
really knowing what you're seeing. Because sometimes you see, and myself included, sometimes you see things that really aren't there. Right. And it's like, and maybe there's a circumstance or something that may make you think that, but that's not what's really happening. So being able to dissect it and read, and be able to read your dog, read dogs, is really, really important.
Mhm.
That's why we push it so much, and that's why we're really wanting for people to get better about it, because it will make life so much easier for the current dog you have, and the dogs in your future, and the dogs all around you as well that are a part of your life, right? Because, like, for those of us who train dogs, every time we lose it, somebody loses a dog, it's a part of you.
Mhm.
It's because you see them all the time. You see them every week, all the time. They're used to you coming into they're part of your life every single week. It's so bad because I know Sue's on the call, but her dog, I connected with that particular, with Nipper, for whatever reason. I connected with that
Mhm.
from the minute she walked through the door. I don't know why, but I did.
She
So,
was a good girl.
it's bad when they had to wait for me to get back from a trip to tell me that she had passed away because they were trying to protect me. And it wasn't my dog, it's her dog. But it was such a profound loss, right? Because that dog was, for whatever reason, I connected with her in such a way. And there are dogs now in my life that I've connected with in such a way that, you know, when it's their time, it's going to be tough, right? Because it's not because I see them every week. I've connected with them in whatever way, and you connect with them all differently, right? But for whatever reason, and that's what I mean. It's, sometimes you click with the dog, and that's why back in the day, and Lisa and Joanne can jump in on this. I used to think, how can you want to give away the dog or rehome the dog? Blah blah blah. But sometimes that's why
Mhm.
there's divorce, because sometimes it's not a good match. And so, not that you should just give up on the dogs, but sometimes when you really aren't feeling that connection with that animal, it's sometimes better to maybe put it in a place where it's better for the dog, right? And it's a hard
Well,
decision to make, right?
or I'll even say you might be awesomely connected to the dog, but the dog does not have a good life. And that's not because of you, it's just because of that situation. So I remember I had a little Doberman. I adopted him. He was a rescue dog. I adopted him as a puppy. And he never grew really, which should have been a sign, first of all. But around 14, 15 months old, he kind of started getting a little aggressive with other dogs and then started turning that onto the other dogs in my house.
Mhm.
And I was devastated. Like, will he be happier in a home with no other dogs, right? Like, would that make his life better? And I tried and worked on it and worked on stuff with other dogs, and it ended up being a medical issue, right? You remember him, Lisa?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, it ended up being a medical issue, and the poor dog didn't live very long. But I couldn't believe I was even having those thoughts of me. I would never get rid of a dog. And it came to that moment where, like, it's not about you, right? It's like, you can love him enough to make his life better. And when I came to the thought about it, right, I remember I did a private with Suzanne. She just happened to be in Chicago, and she's like, you need to run blood work. I'm like, I ran blood work 2 months ago. She's like, you need to run it again. And it ended up, sure enough, his liver was in the toilet. So all
Yeah.
explained, right? But something like that, right? If you have two dogs that, let's just say, they really, they're bloodbaths in your house, right? You can't keep them separate. It's just a horrible life. Would a dog be happier in a safer place? Could you imagine? That's like waking up in prison every morning and wondering when you're going to get shanked. You know what I mean? Like, that's a very real threat.
Yeah.
Being able to wake up feeling safe and secure is something that shouldn't be, a need, right? That should just be a given to a dog. Well, to a human too, but
Yeah. I'd like that too. But yeah, no, it's true. It's like, and that's why sometimes I do a lot of dog to dog um behavioral consults, quite a few. And some, and not always. We always try to do the best to keep everybody in the same house because that's the goal. But there's been on occasion that the best answer was a rehome of one of the dogs, right? It's just not, it wasn't going to work out, and it was going to be hell for everyone, and it's not fair. And sometimes rehoming them is the best thing, is the best
Yeah.
option, right? Not that that you want that, because that's should, we always try to make that the last resort. But if you're, like Joanne said, if you're having fights and you're living with a serial killer, you might want to change that, right? So and Lisa, can you speak to like people returning dogs at the shelter? Like, what are some of the? Because I know a lot of the shelters and rescue people, and not and believe me, I know some of the stuff is like, I have a white carpet, I can't keep the dog. I get that part. I get that.
Well, I think reasons why people are giving up dogs currently. I know at the shelter, the girls were saying we get about 10 calls of people wanting to surrender their dogs a day. We're open 6 days a week, and that's happening across all shelters right now, which is insane. Best Friends actually did a thing. I don't know if people know, but there's 100,000 more pets in the shelter system right now than there was this time last year. 60,000 of those are dogs. 40,000 are cats.
why do you think that is?
Yeah, why is that?
A lot of these dogs, a lot of dogs. So I've seen different areas. What I'm seeing is that some of the more, with the whole thing with COVID and everybody had the covering of the apartment or where they're living and stuff, and how that thing went away. They had nowhere to go. They lost their homes. These dogs were coming in. Yeah. And it was hard. And then I've also seen dogs that, yeah, we're moving, I mean, and then they have to move and stuff, so we got a lot of moving for a while too. But sometimes it was that the dog bit my kid, the dog's fighting with another dog, we can't keep it, and it's unsafe. And so I'm seeing such a mix, which is concerning, um, of that. It's just sad. But I never like taking the owner surrenders, and it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard because you can't judge, right? You have to, as they're talking and stuff, you're like, okay, this is what I'm hearing. It does, kind of like an interpretation of a relationship between the two of them, right? Like, I hear his side, but what's happening with the dog side of it? So it's and it's hard, because sometimes I don't agree with why, but I'm like, okay, do what you got to do, get the dog in. Let's see if we can do this. So, you can't really judge, and it's really difficult.
And the thing is, I know there's people who do rescue on listening on. I'm very concerned because I was pretty active in rescue uh, uh, early on when I first started my business, and it's changed quite a bit. We have people that they have the right heart. They're very well intentioned, but they're really not suited to be rescuing dogs. They're trying to save dogs that bite. They're trying to save dogs that have issues. And some cases, they're creating dogs with problems and issues with things that are not real. That are always asking. They should be asking questions. Well, why is this policy of this rescue? Why are they doing this? Or why are they doing that? Because some of them is just there's no real good reason for that. You can't let the dogs outside. You can't let that. It's like what what are you doing? You have to make sure the dogs get socialized so that they can be rehomed. And the people who do rescue, that's why you end up with a whole ton of dogs. All right,
Mhm.
it's like that's a so yeah, it's and you can't. You have to be responsible for, you know what I mean? So it's not the rescue and the shelter. It's not going in a good place. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not going in the right direction. That's for sure. It's just they're trying to save dogs that shouldn't be, and they're also not allowing people that some of the restrictions are just ridiculous.
Right.
Like we've had some people, well, if if it doesn't have a yard, it can't have a dog. Why not? Those dogs probably get more exercise than the dogs that live that have a yard because they're going to have to be walked and all that all the time.
And more relationship and connection too. Yeah. Right.
Right. Right.
I got denied from a rescue because I wasn't home enough. I worked 8 hours a day, so I wasn't home enough. I'm like, okay.
So does like a whole lot of other Americans that have jobs.
Right. So I'm like, you must not take that many dogs then, but
Right, because how many people are just sitting home that, yeah.
yeah.
So
But
it's good.
I mean, one of the things, I mean, I'll defend a little bit of the rescues. Is it right? No. However, I think back in the day, and it was a long time ago, but we can all say, I bet you all three of us at some point in our lives were like, I just didn't try hard enough, or I don't know the skill to teach this dog to make them okay. Right. And it took some years, and finally we were like, yeah, no, some dogs just aren't right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's just no rehab for them. It's just they're wired wrong. And
Mhm.
it's hard when people don't get in the rescue to put dogs down, right? They
No.
get in the rescue to do what they can to save dogs. And I think the newer the rescue person, the harder it is to kind of say, listen, I know, and I know you want to help, and I know you want to save this, but I'm going to tell you, if we let this dog go, a kid's getting bit. And that's where the more experienced people leave rescue, and people get mad at those experienced people because no, you can't. Like, you know what I mean? Or you're going to take up that spot for 18 months to try one dog when we could save 18 more.
Right.
It's so hard.
Yeah. So and that's what I mean. It's like, and sometimes the other side of the coin, right? Maybe you're in a rescue. How many dogs have not been adopted out from the rescue and that have wonderful homes and found the right home for them? So it's almost like going through the shelter system is a transition period to find the home they belong to, right? Because I mean, I kept quite a few rescue dogs, and we had lovely lives together, and they belonged. Bandit was one of them, and Bailey, and a couple others that nobody else could have had. So I have them. I I kept them, but sometimes that going from one home to another is maybe you're just that transition place, right?
Mhm.
That where the dog um maybe needs to go, right? That's something that's another way to look at it. Daisy, I know. Well, gotta love Daisy. How she ended up back here with me where she started. But anywho, I digress.
Did you adopt her to Patty?
Yes, Lisa and I pulled her out of the Hinsdale Humane Society.
You should drop her off at Lisa's for a staycation.
Nope, I'm good.
That's karma for you guys.
Nope,
Yes. So for
I'm
those
a bit of a drive. Sorry.
so just so you know, yeah, and that's what I mean. Sometimes we're transitions, and actually, to that end, a lovely friend of ours, Patty, passed away. Today is actually would have been her birthday, uh, so it's a tough day as well, in that regard. But Patty did pass away a few months ago, and she always made me promise I would take care of her dogs, and to be quite honest with you, all her dogs ended up where they need to be, right? Their other Zia is in a lovely home, spoiled and adored, and the EXO, her Malinois, is in a home that is perfect for him. It was perfect for him. So Patty was just his transition to get where he belonged because he belongs there. And Daisy was supposed to be mine at some point anyway because she's back with me. Daisy's 14 Jack Russell Terrier. Me that would never have a terrier, but here we are together again. And she's doing absolutely wonderfully. They're all doing great. So those transitions for the dogs are hard, but love and understanding because Daisy is a very very tough little girl, even especially now that she's older. But we're in a good place. Like we're figuring things out, and so is she, and we're because you need a terrier abuse, yeah. And we're in a good place together. Now it's a matter of we need to go to the next level. I need to figure out a way to give her a little more activity because I think even though she loves spending time with my husband, I think she needs something else to do. So understanding that and connecting with a new dog that's it's just it's a different relationship. Like Sue was saying, 8 years with Penny, 8 months with Rambo. Um, you know, while Daisy and I had a relationship her whole life, I've known Daisy and been with her whole life. Our relationship is now different because now she lives in my house, right? So so we're transitioning that relationship to um, so we can better understand each other. What I want you to take away from today is is really trying to understand and ask a lot of why questions, or how is this for you all the time? Why is this dog behaving this way? Good or bad? Why is she doing that? Why is he doing that? Always asking those why questions are really important. It really gives you some clarity. And sometimes those things will come to you in another you might ask the question and not know the answer right away, but then you can roll it around in your head and you might come up with an answer later on, or in the shower is usually when I come up with the answer. It's like, oh yeah, I could do that. But asking that why and how is this for you? That's one of Suzanne's questions all the time. Does this work for you? Are you happy? Is this something that you like? But that's where we get stuck a little bit, you guys, where we're think, oh well, she's upset. Well, what makes you think that? What makes you think that they're upset? What about the dog gives you that feeling? Because in many cases, it's not the dog that's having the issue, it's you. And just being okay, just knowing that is really an important part, right?
There was, speaking of which, today there was a dog at the kennel or at the center, and the staff was having a little bit of issues putting his leash on him. And I know the backstory of the dog, which was interesting, but I was like, that's a bit extreme. Anyway, so the backstory of the dog was that he was running loose in the South. They were trying to catch him, but they couldn't. So they did the catch pole. Okay. Did a catch pole on him, blah, blah, blah. And then what happened was everyone, because he's all sensitive around his head and his neck, they're saying, oh, whatever, that it's definitely the catch pole. He was catch poled and everything. And I'm like, no, that's interesting. Because then I noticed things like when I was walking him, the leash moved a little bit. It hit his ear. He was dodging it. He was just in. Then when he got closer, you were able to really rub his neck and everything. And I don't know if like there was something going on in the head, but it was interesting. Like his ears were like a little pinkish and stuff like that. So I made all these little observations. That's interesting. I don't know what it means in terms of, is this why he's head shy? Is it because of the catch pole incident, or has he always been that? Or is it because, he's got an ear infection? I mean, there's so many pieces to it that you need to consider. So anyway, we were working with him, and this is how I knew how to proceed in one direction or another. What happened was I went to go into his kennel. Dogs are barking crazy, and I had tons of cheese, and I was trying to see if I could touch him, get close and see. I'm like, is this okay? Is this okay? But in the kennel, he was so much more compressed that I felt bad putting so much pressure on him. And then finally, I stepped off, and then I, see if he try to come to me. He wasn't comfortable. He didn't do anything to back any of his behavior up in terms of, he wasn't growling. He was just like, please don't. And I was like, all right, I got it. Right. So, but I had to get him out of the kennel, blah, blah, blah. Went ahead and hooked him up on his leash. I tried this. Well, tried the slip leash first in the kennel itself, but just this holding it over his head, with the cookie to lure him through to see, and just gently lay it, whatever. Well, he was like, I can't do that. And he had his biggest reaction where he flinched the most with that. And I was like, that's interesting. So I didn't do the slip lead because obviously it was bad pressure, right? Too much pressure. It wasn't fair to him, and he couldn't escape. So I go ahead and hook. I finally was like petting him and trying to distract him. And it was interesting. What I noted was that somebody had tried that trick where you try to like snatch and leash the dog. You drop cookies on the floor to snatch and leash him up. Does that make sense? Like, to try and get him to whatever. So we got him out, and then we all worked with him. We sat in a room. There were 2 other volunteers with me. Great volunteers. And we just sat back and let him come to us. And he was like, yeah, I can offer you my neck. And, oh, that feels good. And it was just interesting, but all of his body language, his leaning in. At first he was worried. His motions were short and fast. He's looking around the room. He doesn't know us. He doesn't have a relationship with us. He doesn't know he's in a safe place, those kinds of things. And it's just people don't consider that, and they just consider, oh, the dog's been abused, or you know what I mean? They assume that, and they don't know. So I guess, that's what I saw. It was very interesting. We counter conditioned it. I had the leash. He started putting his head in, and actually I even did the slip leash because I was curious. Is it different here? Is it different there? You know what I mean? And it totally was. When he had more autonomy and choice, he was more inclined to go ahead and let you do it. Right.
Yeah. So, and I think that's where we fail our dogs, is we take away the choice part.
Yeah. Right? I mean, the other thing I was going to say about that too, right? That we get into our habit of, because we have our human routines, right? What we hear, I think, a lot from most handlers, well, I had to put the slip leash on him to get him out of the kennel. Did you have to? Right? Could you have thrown a cookie and let him out? Could you have done what Lisa did, right? And like played with a regular collar? Could you have put a harness on it? Like, what did you actually try when you say I had to? You know what I mean? Like, did you have to? Because that's what you had at the moment, and it was the most convenient thing for you? Or did you have to because you tried everything else and nothing worked, right? And I think most people can say, it's what I had. It was the most convenient thing for me at the moment. And that's where asking the dog, right? How is this for you? And they're like, it sucks and I hate it, right? And living with somebody else that has verbals can say, I really hate it when you leave the cap off the toothpaste. Could you do better? And you're like, okay, I'll do my best, right? So dogs just don't have the verbals, but they have the nonverbals that they talk to us all the time. And that's, again, back to, right, sort of why we're so big on sharing all of this reading dogs, is so that you can get some more insight into when a dog's not feeling good about something.
Right. And sometimes with people, the verbals, it's because they can't remember to put the cap on the toothpaste. So that's when you have to escalate things. But anywho.
Is that a personal situation for you?
But I'm just saying. Anyway, how is this for you? It's for me, it's going to be rough for you if you keep leaving the cap off the toothpaste. So, but it brings up a good point. The autonomy, and if the dog was so you always want to ask. I always ask that question too. Like I always think about it. If my dog was free to choose right now, where would he choose to be? It's such a good question to ask. If I was to take my dog off whatever and he had a choice to go elsewhere and do something else, what would he choose to be? Where would he choose to be? It's always a good question. And sometimes it's a very painful answer.
Not here with you. No.
Exactly. So we're always asking those questions, right? Where would you, if the dog had the freedom to choose, where would he choose to be? And one of the things we tend to do is, and this is more and more, and it's very upsetting because it almost seems like this is our new way of training. In some cases, we always come up with an excuse as to why the dog behaved that way. It's like, no, it's not don't come up with an excuse. Oh, he had this, or he had that, or he just got this, or he just got that.
Yep.
We sometimes ask the question, but sometimes he's just having a bad day, right, Tyrone? Uh, yeah, sometimes, he had something, sniffy, or the dog was extra, whatever. Sometimes you're just having a bad day. And sometimes we have to just, where sometimes we say, oh my God, now he's got this problem. No, he just had a bad day that one day, right? He just was not a good day for him. And those things happen, and that's what you gotta do. So always asking questions. How is this for the dog? How is this going to work for you? But that it also enhances our human relationships too. It's like, what's a better way to deal with this situation? I, as an employer, have had to ask those questions quite a lot. How do I make this where we can have a good relationship, and I can get some, and we can understand each other, because that's really, at the end of the day, what makes relationships great and harmonious is, do we understand each other? Is that okay? Is like, you get me, I get you. It's great. Yes, Tyrone, he did, and he did awesome this weekend. So, and it's usually our bad day. Isn't that the truth, Susan? Sometimes, Sue, it's so true. Sometimes it's like, and sometimes you already know it going in. It's not going to be good. So maybe I shouldn't train the dog.
Yeah. I think for me, the saddest one is when people are like, yeah, I know he hates that, but like,
yeah,
come on, man.
To.
Like, that's not fair.
Right.
So
yeah.
If you already know the answer to the question without even asking it, that's where, it makes me the most sad. Like, do better, right?
Yeah. Because that's why. Yeah, why would you like that? Somebody says, "Well, I really don't. I wish you wouldn't do that," and they'll be like, "Well, tough Tony's. I'm going to do it anyway." That's like, that's when, yeah, it's not good for me. I don't like that, but you're going to do it anyway. It's like, right? It's not. It doesn't feel so good. So, and it's not that dogs. And just to be clear, everybody, it's not that we want to let the dogs do whatever they want and it's whatever. No, no, no. There are still rules. There's still structure. There's still things that are okay and things that are not going to be allowed, and things that they have to tolerate, right? Going to the vet. We will do everything in our power to make that a better thing, but regardless, you have to go to that. You can't, there's no way around that. But you can make it better. For like all my dogs love going to the vet, except for Rizzo. She doesn't love it. But we make it good with lots of yummies, right? Um, so there are that doesn't what we're talking about how is this for you doesn't mean that you just, oh well, he doesn't want to, no. Then it's like you want the questions are so that you can figure out how to better train it and how to get
Mhm.
them to be okay with it. Not to say that, oh, unless it's something that really, like in Lisa's case with Fender, she wanted him to be her agility dog, and he wasn't. His temperament wasn't suited for that particular sport.
Right.
So she had to give that up. Usually a bigger deal, right? But if it's like, oh, your dog doesn't like walking through a, narrow pathway, well, you can fix that and make it better. You can help
Mhm.
them with that piece of it. You can help them with that piece of, with that information. Like the dog, the barking. It's like, okay, I have to take care of it because it bothers me. And this is where relationships, it's what you make of it, and it's what works for you. There's no, like we tell people, we're going to teach you all these things for your dog: the sit, a stay, a come, a walking around. We're going to teach you all those things, but you're going to use what suits your lifestyle the best, and the most,
Mhm.
and how you live your life. Like uh like running, bolting out the door, I don't like that, so I do that. Matters to me, so I train that, right? But my little dog's jumping up, I don't care. I let him jump up, I don't care. But that's my lifestyle. There are other people who would not allow that. My big dogs, I don't let them jump up, right? I don't care. I don't want that. So everything that you teach your dog, or that they don't have to know it. They just, it's got to be where it's going to work in your home and in your lifestyle, and what's going to be good for you and for your dog. So there's no rules. You should teach. The only things that I want my dogs to have always and be good at is a recall. Come when called. That's
Yep.
huge. Like that to me is so important. So that is what I that and don't pull me. Those two things are safeties, really. Don't pulling me on leash because I'm getting older and there's ice and all that stuff, and coming when called. Come when I call you, because it's going to save your life.
Mhm.
All the rest of it, eh. I I work on it, but clearly not as much as those two things for me. And everybody's list of what is important to them is going to vary, right? And so there's not a right or wrong. Well, your dog should do this or know this. No,
Mhm.
it's what's going to work for your home, for your family, right? And that's why you want to, if depending on what your lifestyle is, you want to adjust to that. And for some of you who are want to have children and all that kind of stuff, you need to make sure that if your plans in the future is to have kids, then you probably shouldn't have your dog sleeping on the bed, because it's going to change. And so it's no different than saying, okay, you can sleep on this lovely bed, and then now that it's changed, now you can't. That's harder. It's easier to just say, you're going to sleep on this bed, and this is what's normal, and this is what's expected, and then maybe down the road, if you don't have kids or whatever, they can sleep on the bed, right? You should get a recall. Oh, Ronnie.
You and your expectations.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have so many farmyard distractions sitting
Oh, boy.
around. Maybe they'd come back. Just kidding.
Maybe you need to, yeah, right. But so yeah, whatever you learn or whatever you choose to have your whatever you want your dogs to learn, it's got to fit your lifestyle.
Mhm.
Not just because they say. That's why all the stuff you learn in class, come and call, down, stay, all those things. It depends what's important to you and for your lifestyle and your family. And if you don't care, if you don't worry about running out the door, then you're fine. You're good. Don't worry about it. But if you cat distractions, where's he? Maybe you need to get a cat there, Tony or Ronnie.
He's got a bunch outside. That's why our dogs don't come back.
Nice.
So
but yeah, so that's what I mean. That's what a relationship is. And those of us like in my case, I've been married more than once. um it's different expectation and a different relationship, and how we lived is with how you had a relationship with one person is not is has changed, is going to be different than with the new person. So you have to adjust and adapt to it. So um same with dogs, right? What It's okay, a lot of people try to get a dog and it's like, oh, it's got to be he fell into the pond with the cat. Great. um but if you are going, you know what I mean, you you want to be, oh, I want the both dogs to enjoy the same things. They really can't all depending on where they are in their training or they are temperamentally, they you may not be able to. Yeah,
Hmm.
you can't have it, can't be as equal as you may want it to be, right? You might have to just adjust things with one dog versus another,
Yep.
right?
I really wish my boys would get along, but there's nothing I can do to fix that. That's on them, right?
Hmm.
So when you have personality types that just don't care for each other, that's not something that's fixable, right? Stop being so aroused and you stop caring so much, right? You know, so what do? We try and make a safe situation and we try to keep everybody feeling safe and secure. And that is what I can give, right? I can make it work. So I'm not giving anybody up, right? But at the same time, if I said, well, you guys, you need to figure it out because I'm not doing anything different, I'd be spending a lot of money at the vet, I bet.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. And the truth be told, in Joanne's situation, both dogs are pretty happy. They live a pretty nice life. Nobody's worried about the other one killing each other because they're not the level of not getting along isn't that bad where they at every chance, because there are cases that every chance the dogs get to be that are together, or every chance the dog gets, they're gonna go after the other dog. That
Hmm.
is not Joanne's case. So that is why it works, right? Because there are cases where the dog will, first chance they get, they're gonna try to get to the other dog, which is not Joanne's situation.
We're on the eye rolls, not the, rifles.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, exactly. You're on the yeah, they're like, and they
Well,
probably, if they
I
would
will
be together, they would be by like, oh my god.
yeah, right.
I will say that coming from that situation where you have the separated house, which it's hard. It's a pain in the butt. We're so and so. Oh, and it's me and my husband, so I can manage a bit more in terms of having multiple dogs and having an extra hand. So he's been a good sport about it. But it's like, who are so and so? Oh, I put him in the bathroom. Now let so and so out. I mean, it's a pain in the butt when you have multiples, right? So, and that's kind of what I went through. And then now that everybody gets along,
You're
I'm
like, what do
like,
we do?
wow, how the heck did this happen? And, it's just, it's nice to not have to manage.
Yep.
So I mean, and everybody does what's within their limits, like Nancy was saying. I don't care if my dogs jump on me, and I don't want them jumping on other people. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but they're young. And it's just, do I ultimately, if I absolutely didn't care about it or cared about it, actually would do something more, be like, oh, absolutely not, you can't do that. But
Right.
we all pick what's important to us in that relationship.
Right. So, and that's why with trainers, it really gets interesting how, well, your dog should know this. Well, really, but that's not my lifestyle, right? That it doesn't that working on something that's not going to suit your lifestyle is kind of crazy. You want to, whatever you're going to work on training, whatever you choose to teach your dog, or whatever thing you want to do with your dog, it's got to choose that lifestyle. So having said that, for those of you who do the dog sports, teaching your dog to be in a crate is, I think all dogs need to learn that skill, right?
Right.
Especially if you're going to ask your dog to go to a dog show, be around a bunch of dogs and be and all that. And if you're asking it for that to in the honor of that sport that you like, then you need to. It is only fair for you to give the dogs the skills to be able to do that, right? It's no different than, let's go ice skating, but I don't know how to ice skate. It's okay, you'll be fine. No, you're not going to be fine. You need to teach me how to ice skate, and then we can go together, and it'll be a little more fun.
911 is only three numbers. It'll be fine.
But it's true, right? We do that to our dogs all the time. Oh, it's fine. I don't understand why he's not so good in the, or why he's having a hard time. Well, have you ever really, worked on it? Well, I would venture to guess the answer is probably no. So, whatever you want, whatever relationship you have, or whatever activities you like to do with your dogs, make sure that you train for that, right? For
Mhm.
that skill, for those skills that you
Right.
want, and then that way, everybody knows what's expected. Um, the other thing I want to share. This is, uh, it's an interesting thing for people with people. It's like one of the things I noticed. I was teaching a class, and one of the things that we do with our dogs when we're teaching them not to pull on a leash is when we make our turns. And this is and I challenge you, when we make our turns, you should kind of tell your dogs where you're going. instead of instead of just, and I remember Suzanne gave a very interesting analogy of that. It's like, let's say we're walking down the street, and we're talking and all that, and
Oh, yes.
somebody just peels off and goes into the coffee shop, and you're just walking along. You're like,
I remember those.
it's like, no, we just say, hey, let's go into this coffee shop over here. But we do that to the dogs all the time. You just turn, and the dogs are like, hey, where'd you go? Instead of giving them that information.
Right.
So communication, right? Guys, communication. We want to communicate with our dogs and each other about what's expected. And again, the communication isn't always verbal. It's like, hey, let's go this way, or
Mhm.
whatever. Giving the dog, and it's not giving the dog the information they need to make it to be able to be with us and live with us. And we don't do that. I was like, why are we still turning and not telling them we're turning? We're still doing that.
Right.
That's from like the Keeler method. Well, they'll catch up. Well, yeah, duh, because they're on leash. Right? But if you were healing with off leash, your dog would be walking that way and you'd be over going this way. It's like, so that, just think about that. That was such it's funny analogy, but it's like, yeah, that's what we do all the time. We're just walking, and yeah, that's great. You're doing a great job. And then you just take off and go somewhere else. And the dog's supposed to figure that out. It's like, no, you should kind of tell them, hey, we're turning. Let's go this way. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as you're doing your healing training or loose leash walking, don't forget that part.
Yeah. I think too, some of the communication styles, just think about that, right? Like anyone who works in corporate America or has in the last 15 years, right? You had to take the test, which, they have the disc test. They have the,
Mhm.
You get a color, or you get this is the style of my communication, right? And so you have, the red people, the dominant people, the driver people, right? Who are like, let's go, right? We got to get stuff done. Come on. All right. What's next? Right. Some people are wearing red today. So, but you know what? Those are the people, honestly, that, they always got back. They're always like, did you get this? Did you this? How about this? Let's go. Right. And you're like, oh my God, calm down. Right. So I've always been somebody who's very, they call me expressive, or I worry about other people's feelings, or I'm very like, I want the group to be together. I'm that person. Right. I don't know. Have you ever taken a test like that, Lisa? What are you?
Mm-mm. No, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I've
you're
been
like,
out of
myself.
I'm definitely a driver for sure.
Yes, you are, for sure, right?
Yeah.
So when you have two different styles that come together,
Mhm.
sometimes, right, you have to be like, okay, I need a minute. Can you calm down? Or I need you to step it up because, right, you're driving me nuts. So I know, like with Bam the Doberman, when I first got him, I am not that dog trainer, right? I'm very quiet. And I do things very kind of silently. And I'm like, come here, sit. Right? I'm actually pretty darn quiet when I do stuff. And he's like, huh? What? I don't know what's happening. And so he was like, I need more information and more information. I was like, oh my God, I hate this. Like, I just feel like I'm like talking in his ear, right? And it was not uncomfortable for me, but it helped him.
Right.
So, right, I had to meet him in the middle somewhere. And I think sometimes too, right? It's hard when we get into our styles. It's what's comfortable for us. We don't like to change it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And every dog is different, just like every person's different.
Right. And it goes back to, and this is a whole nother Facebook Live, you guys. Um, if you are like the way you communicate, like I'm a talker. I talk, 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 talk. That's how I talk. But if you have a dog that's not so auditory, um, or
Hmm.
that's more visual, you have to change your style a little bit. Like, okay, let's go this way, or whatever. You have to maybe do a hand signal instead of just talking if the dog isn't as auditory, right? So it really, so knowing your dog's style too is very helpful in how to communicate with you. And basically, like we always talk about it, like if your dog's more visual or more auditory or more kinesthetic. Because if a dog's kind of a little more kinesthetic, you can just tap him and say, "Come on, let's go this way," right? As long as that kind of it's not over, over the top, right? So, um, my
I
cat
was
is
hoping
just
that wasn't the cat that fell off.
no, it was not the cat. So always knowing what how your dog takes in his world is really important too. It helps with training, right? If you have a dog that's more visual, hand signals are going to help, right? You're
You got two D's in the same house. Oh, Lori.
yes, she does, Lori. Divot doesn't like my D. She wants to be the D. Yep,
Oh.
absolutely. Anyway, I hope what you hope I hope you gain from our little chat today is kind of really what's good for the dogs and how to better deepen the relationship you have with them, right? How
Hmm.
to make it better. And there's 1,000 ways to do it. That's why in the dog training world where everybody's like, well, there's only one way to do it. Really? Well, I beg to differ. There's 1,000 different ways to teach something or to make it happen. You just have to be creative about it. And there's just, science is part of it. And like I said, we always say dog training is part science and part art. And that's an absolute true statement. So
Mhm.
happy Valentine's Day with your lovey-dovey dogs, and
Happy
have
VD.
have a great day, and hopefully in whatever the rest of the weekend is. All right. Good night, all.
Good
Bye,
night.
guys.